And we're missing a lot of that today.
This is Dan
I'm
Harrell
afraid so.
with
It's
UT
not like
Extension.
it's rocket science, but it's common sense. And I'm very grateful for Farm Bureau and, of course, Chris's talent. Hey, thank you for being here today. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Now, I got to tell you, my name is Dan Harrell. I'm with the University of Tennessee Extension. My niche is school and community gardens. I'm a coordinator in Davidson Metro County Schools. I work with both public and private schools. I think we've got some UT folks here, so I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I just want to say just a word. I mean, in other words, I'm saying things you already know. I'm preaching to the choir. But the University of Tennessee extends knowledge from the research of the university. I like to say we research everything from beef cattle to broccoli. And we don't just take 10, 20 years, we hold 30, 40 years of research. And we extend that to the citizens of the county. And every, 95 counties, and all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee, you have at least one extension agent there, at least one. And in our case, we have several in Davidson County. And there's a lot more agriculture going on than many people think in Davidson County. And I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful. Now, where's it going? Well, let me tell you where it's going. It's going to gardens. It's going to community gardens and urban farming and this sort of thing. And that's why I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I wish we had 30 people here today who were interested in what we're talking about. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the way it's going. You're talking about in Chicago, your major cities, New York, guess where it's going? Where's agriculture going? It's going toward urban farming and school gardens. So I want to talk to you today, and don't let this fool you. This says fall vegetable gardening. I'll explain that in just a minute. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to run through these slides real quick, but what I want to talk to you today is about this. I want to talk to you about school gardens and community gardens. I hope you asked, well, how many, didn't get the feel, how many are school teachers here? Anybody school teacher? 1, 2? 1, 2. I saw a boys club. Who's boys and girls club? Right here? Okay, great. You're in Knoxville? Okay, great. What else do we have here?
Garden Center.
Garden Center. Now, when you say
Public Housing Learning Center.
okay, great. So are you serving kids, children, and adults, or just children? Okay, great. Well, when I say I'm teaching in schools and community, we're doing both. We're serving kids and we're serving adults, because think about it. Most of us are 3 or 4 generations removed from the farm, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. Now, my grandmother knew things that she passed on to me, but have I passed those on real good to my kids? My grandmother and my grandfather both showed me how to cut up a chicken. Now, I don't even need to teach my kids that anymore, but they showed me how to cut up a chicken because they thought that was important. Okay, I'm just saying, but what are we doing today? I saw a young lady go over here, and she looked at these little snacks, and you know what she did first thing? What did she do? She read the label. We're looking at labels. We're looking at who grew it, what's in it, where was it grown. Those are important to us, aren't they? Location. We're talking more and more about local farming, fresh vegetables that are grown here locally. People are buying beef from their local farmer. They're buying dairy from a local farmer. That's the way it's going. And so I want you to be informed with that, and also to counter that with some good old common sense. Now, there's not a person out there who wouldn't want either a community or a school garden. Let me talk the difference between a school and a community garden. A community garden is exactly what it says. It's meant to draw the community together. However you want to do that, whether you're in a learning center and trying to be in a certain neighborhood, you want to involve the parents. Those kids come there, maybe it's an after-school program. The kids come there, we're growing food and vegetables, but we're trying to bring in the parents and the grandparents who really care about gardening, who know all about turnip greens, and by the way, love to cook them. Bring those in. We're bringing that community together. It's a matter of bringing the community together in some way. We also can have goals in there. Our goal in a community garden may not only be to bring the community together, but also let's feed our community. Let's give our community back some fresh vegetables. So I've got community gardens who are giving literally hundreds of pounds to Second Harvest Food Bank or to a local church where they're distributing this food. And that's their goal. It's about quantity. Now let's contrast that with school gardens. Our school gardens are not about feeding the community. Now, first of all, our school gardens are about quality, about education. I want you to know that we try to develop school gardens in Nashville that are outdoor classrooms. No walls, no ceilings, but classrooms nonetheless. They're learning about soil, what we talked about here, plant structure. They're learning about photosynthesis. We're learning about vermiculture. In fact, I think I'm going to sing a song today about earthworms. Yeah, I was going, okay, anyway. But I brought my guitar today to sing you a couple garden songs, and one of them I got is about earthworms. Okay. Yeah, I know. You won't be laughing when I get you up Winkler. Just kidding. Well, I've got to go quick here, but the school garden is all about learning and teaching kids. So I promote in school gardens, and I say the same thing if you're in an after-school program. Let's do raised beds. Why raised beds? If I get right out here and I just plow out this grass right here, what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to disturb a big old seed bed that's got crabgrass and dandelions and no telling ragweed and whatever else. But I can take a box, build it or however you want to do it, and buy it at Home Depot, 4x8 garden. Put some kind of block down, either cardboard, you can put cardboard, newspaper, anything to block the sun. If a plant can't get sun, it can't grow. We're not going to eliminate weeds, but we're going to control them. We put that block down, and then we put good soil in there. This is important. I had a teacher and she was right out of Harvard, and she's very young, and she just knew that she knew more than I did. And I wasn't going to have a contest with her. I wasn't trying to be ugly, but I said, let me help you through Farm Bureau get some good soil. I mean, $500 goes a long way to building your little school garden or your community garden. And by the way, I'm kind of machine gunning this, but let me tell you something. If you're just starting, you know what my motto is? Number one, plan before you plant. And secondly, if you want to have big success, start small. Okay, start small. Don't try to bite off. I'm telling you, a lot of gardeners, they look through the magazine like a girl planning for her wedding. I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And it does sound good, but start small. Let me tell you about school gardens, and I'll talk a little bit about raised beds. But let me tell you about school gardens and how to get a school garden. Here it is. Number one, talk to your principal. He or she is the most important person to get that school garden off the ground. You've got to have their permission. And we've got to have their blessing. Now, my goal in the school is to get the whole school involved. If I've got K through 5, I want to have 5 beds, and each grade level has a bed. Those are just some things, but you can do it any way you want to. That principal may say, well, really, at this time, this year, I only want the 2nd and 3rd graders to be involved. That's fine. It's your school, and we'll do what you want to do. But get the principal involved. Number 2, we need to layer a structure of support. What do I mean by that? I've got to have some teachers who are excited about this. But if we only have teachers, some things can go wrong. I can take you anywhere in Nashville you want to go, and I can show you wonderful beds. Some corporation, like the Junior League or United Healthcare, poured hundreds of dollars into a school garden, and they're growing Johnson grass. Good stands of it now. I mean, good stands. But what happened? Well, there was a teacher, now this is just one case there. There's a teacher, and she's right out of college, and she is excited about gardening. She's all about local, fresh, and teaching these kids. And she gets this money, and she raises this money, and then she gets married. Or she gets pregnant. And she's gone. And what happens? We start growing Johnson grass. So we want to say, number one, get the principal, and then we want to get our teachers, and also try to get parents involved, because you want to sustain this. We've got a wonderful garden at Granbury Elementary. The lead person at that school garden is a parent. Now, she brings the teachers along, but she's the one who leads it. So there's another, and also getting people in the community involved. I guarantee you, if you've got a school, and if it's a neighborhood school, and you start advertising in the pickup line or the drop-off line, hey, we're starting a school garden, just a little flyer, whatever it is, I'm telling you, there's going to be parents who want to be involved. So we try to layer that. And then thirdly, I want you to think about location, location, location. I know that sounds real estate, but it's talking about school gardens too. What do we need? We need a location where we have plenty of sun. We need at least 6 hours of sun every day. This is important because when I go on site and somebody says, oh, we got the perfect place, and they bring me to a place, and it is a good place, and right here is a big old oak tree. And this is, of course, it's January now, right? And there's plenty of shade. Plenty of sun. But that oak tree is going to shade out, leaf out, and it's going to shade out our garden. I had a little homeschool group that wanted to garden. They wanted to do conventional gardening, even though I tried to get them to do raised bed. That's okay. And they had this spot over in the corner, but it's underneath the trees. They grew corn. You know what that corn did? Leaned. You know, I've never seen leaning corn before. You know why I was leaning? Trying to get to the sun. So we want to think about locations. That sun, need plenty of sun. Secondly, we need a good water source. Now, after this time today, if you want to talk to me about some drip irrigation systems or rain barrels, all those kind of things, I'm all for them. And I can tell you some good ways. I don't know here. I'm going to be speaking locally. For instance, in Nashville, there's a group called the Cumberland River Compost. And they are all about preserving the water of the Cumberland River. They'll come to your school and build a rain garden. They'll also give you rain barrels. Okay, that's in Nashville. But I'm sure in Knoxville and other places, you can find places that'll do that. But even if you collect the water, that's great, but I still sure do like a spigot nearby. I really do. And I think, again, if you'll start small, you'll have big success. Those are the three main things. Now, I told you that about this soil. Why do I say raised beds? Well, I already mentioned to you, when we're talking about kids, I don't want them out there weeding and sweating and burden. The garden is supposed to be a blessing and not a burden. Remember that. It's supposed to be a blessing, not a burden. We're trying to teach them about carrots and lettuce. And this is my little maxim. I don't care if they're from a rural county around here. I drove through Spring City. I got up on that mountain. I could read my lesson tag as I was coming down. Shoo. Well, I guarantee you those kids out there still know more about French fries than they do carrots. So we're teaching these kids about where food comes from. So we want the good raised bed. We can block the weeds, put good soil in there. That teacher I mentioned straight from Harvard, she had a friend who had a horse farm, and they brought the soil in, and went back there in the spring, and she had 12-foot high ragweed. Now why?
I did the same thing.
Did you? Okay.
And I was told to do that at the Master Gardener's class. They said, oh, go get this horse manure. I got for 14 raised beds.
Wow.
I get to redo this spring.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't want to put down any master gardeners. I'm trying to say that if you use good practices, what I'm telling you will help you a lot.
Yeah.
So these are more suggestions, but I'm just saying if you need to know what's in that bed. Okay. Now, what happens all over Tennessee in the summertime? Fescue dies out because it gets dry in July. What comes on? Bermuda grass. Yes. The scourge of my life, Bermuda grass. But Bermuda grass is going to come over my beds, but I can pull that. But when it's coming up through those beds, puts out rhizomes, man, you talk about it hard to get out. And if you don't do it right to start with, you'll always have it. But in that, if I have the soil in it, good soil, I know what's in my soil, then I've got a lot better chance of not growing weeds. Okay? So I want to do that. And then the other thing is just having a good location with plenty of sun and water. Now that's a quick overview. What I'm going to do here is I want to show you some of the things that we can grow here in Tennessee in the spring. We have 3 growing seasons. Now, if you want to talk to me later about hoop houses, that's just to extend our season. That's just putting plastic over some of these beds and just doing that. You can extend our seasons that way. But we have 3 seasons. We're fixing to go, or we're in the winter time now, and we're fixing to go into the spring. What we grow in the spring and what we grow in the fall are the same type vegetables. We call them cool season vegetables. Some of them are very cold hardy. In other words, you could start putting some of these in the ground at the end of February, depending on our weather. I don't want you to put them out in the snow, but if we've got pretty good weather, you can start doing these in late February, early March. And what do we want to do? Some of these kids now, not an after-school program, but if you're an in-school program, they're getting out in May. They're not going to see tomatoes for the most part. Not peppers. We can see them in the fall a little bit. But I'm talking about some things where they can see and taste and eat and enjoy during the school year. So we can start early. There's all kinds of ideas, but I'm just going to go through these quickly. Now, again, I'm not trying to machine gun it, but I also want to respect your time, and I will take questions at the end. Just want to talk to you quickly about cool season vegetables. You can see some of these things. I'm not going to go over all these. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Not going to go over all these things. You can read them yourself. What I want to show you about cool season vegetables, really it's about any vegetable, but a cool season vegetable like broccoli is going to grow in the cool season. But what happens in the warm, it's going to bolt. Bolt means it puts out seed. All plants have a cycle. Now they don't have brains, but they have a cycle. So you know what we do with this broccoli? We're actually eating the floret here, see? We're going to pick that broccoli from the middle out, and we keep it from bolting. If we don't pick it, guess what it'll do? Even while it's still cool, it can still start to seed because it says, hey, time for me to go. And I'm sure the people who've heard me get tired of this example, but it's a good example, I think. Growing up on the farm, we talk about chickens. You know how we kind of fool the hen? Well, here's what we do. We've got a hen. We want her to lay in this certain nest. We don't want her to go out in the pasture, lay everywhere. We want to put her in this nest. She's going to lay 5 eggs. We're going to get 4 of them and leave one. Now, a hen does have a brain, but it's not very big. So when she comes back, she doesn't say, where are my eggs? She says, hey, I need to put more eggs in there. And that's what she does. We do the same thing with a plant. When we pick the fruit, I have to tell a lot of my community gardens, pick that eggplant off there. If you want it to keep flowering, pick the fruit. Some people say, I want to wait, I want it to get bigger, pick it. Peppers the same way. You want to pick that stuff so that it won't go to bolting. Here's some of the things. I could just stop right here really and just talk about. These are the things we can grow, what I call very cold-hardy and moderately cold-hardy. You see some things in there that would just be great for schools? Any kind of your leafy greens. Leaf lettuce, how about kale? That's the superfood these days, right? Kale. Maybe not so much the mustard or collard greens, but radish, carrots. Oh, carrots are probably number one thing kids love to grow. Onions, cabbage, and English peas. I like English peas. If you're going to grow a spring garden or a fall garden, please include English peas. You need to have it, something for it to climb on. I use it for the kids. I say, kids, you like to climb on the monkey bars? This English pea loves to climb. And it's going to climb and it puts out a beautiful little blossom. And then you can eat it raw, right out. Snap that pea right off, open that thing up, and I've taught to you the looks on kids' faces when I say, anybody want to taste this? Ooh! And I take that little thing, put it in my mouth, and say, man, that tastes like candy. And they all want to bite of it. And they love it. Now, it's not sweet like Jolly Ranchers, but it is sweet. And they're tasting something for the first time, maybe raw. So we can teach all kinds of things with that. Well, this is just more about, we're going to talk about seed packets later. I'm going to skip some of this. Now, this is just about fall. I'm just going to show you 3 days. What this is showing you, especially if you're just growing turnips in your community garden or for your own consumption, remember that especially in the fall, turnip greens taste better after the first frost. What happens is, it has a frost, remember it reacts, there's a little frost, I don't mean to freeze, I'm talking about a frost, and those roots send all the sugars up into the leaves. And that's when it's the best time. So about 2 weeks after that first frost. So it's important to read your packet. This is for us guys here. We don't like to read directions, but it is important to read your packet. Number one, okay, what's our average frost? This is Davidson County. Our first frost comes about the 15th. 2 weeks later is going to be when we're going to harvest those things, you see. So we have to ask, well, what's next? Well, this is the day of the first harvest. So when do we plant? Well, the packet says 40 days to the first harvest, right? And then it says adding 10 days gives 50 days for the first harvest in the fall. So when is our last planting day? We need to plan before we plant. Most people in September think it's too hot to start growing greens, see? It's hot in September, but that's the time you want to put it in. That's just a plan. Let's talk real quickly. I like in schools to grow leafy greens instead of the head lettuce. Grow the leafy lettuce. By the way, you continue to cut these things, they'll keep growing back. And I do lettuce tastings in my schools. We get out there and the kids come out, we get under the picnic tables. One school's got a tulip poplar tree, which is our state tree. We can talk about our state tree. We can talk about where these things came from. We pick Swiss chard, we pick the leaf lettuce, we pick the spinach, we put it on a plate. Give them a little ranch dressing. Yes, that's the key. And then they taste it. Now, I say to everybody, every one of them, I say, you don't have to like it, but I do want you to taste it. Because how many kids say, I don't like spinach? Well, really? Have you ever tasted it? No? Okay, taste it. We're going to do that. Spinach, there's another, this is a great one. I had great spinach growing in my school gardens. I'm going quickly. Mustard greens, you know the difference between greens. Your mustard greens are going to be a little spicier. Collard greens, most of the time you're going to have to get that vein out. I don't care how long you cook that thing, it just won't get real tender. Now some people disagree with me on that, but for the most part that's true. A collard green's a little more maintenance than just picking it off and lettuce. Here's kale. Now this is a great one to grow. There's not a teacher out there or a principal who wouldn't want to say no to kale. By the way, you get some of this purple kale and it's beautiful to grow. It's beautiful to look at. It's what I call an edible landscape. Radish, this is a great one. You have to be careful because radish can be a little spicy. And so I try to get the schools to go toward what I call icicle radish. Look for those. You'll find those in any of your big box stores like Home Depot. But especially if you want to go, I always try to support the local farmers co-op and our Ace Hardware. You'll find a lot of these. By the way, if you got a local store like that, go to them and say, hey, I'm with the after school program. I'm with the school, middle school. We're doing a school garden. What will you give us? I guarantee you they will give you some things. It might be seed, it might be soil. You may say, we need some little three-pronged forks, whatever. They will give you these things. They want to be supportive. So I love radishes. Be sure you pick these radishes when you see them like this. Don't leave them in there too long. They get spicier as they stay in the ground, okay? Carrots, this is the #1 thing in schools. You got to have loose soil. That's another reason I love raised bed gardens. Put them out here, that old soil's packed down because we walk on it, we play on it, but in our loose soil of a raised bed, these carrots grow well. If it hits a rock, that old carrot will grow out like that, and it looks like Frankenstein's daughter, and nobody wants to eat that. You can still eat it, but it won't be very pleasing to the eye. A lot of different colors too. Try to look for different colors, not just the same sort of orange, but look for some of those red and purple carrots. The kids would love to see the colors. Onions, I'm going to do this very, it's very cold hardy. In 3 ways to plant onions. Seed, sand from the co-op. You see those? You got 3 of them. You got your purple onion, your white onion, your yellow onion, whatever. Might be a Vidalia, might be whatever. But you can plant those from seeds. It's like planting a bulb. You can teach the kids. We're not eating. I do this all the time. When we eat the lettuce, we're eating the leaf. Right? When we eat the carrot, we're eating the root. When we eat corn or okra, what are we eating? We're eating the seed. Yeah. So, and then when you eat asparagus, you're eating the stem. So I tell them, I say, go to the restaurant. If you really want to confuse your waiter or waitress, say, I'd like a bowl of stem, seeds, leaves, and roots with some ranch dressing on the side. That's what we're eating. But here, we're not actually eating the root. This is actually a bulb that we're eating. You see the roots down here? Those are actually the roots. So you can teach all kind of lessons, and I know I'm going real fast, but these are just different ones. Love turnip greens. Got 2 different types. You got what?
Take your time.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, thank you. Their stomachs may not be saying the same thing, though.
Well, it's not here yet.
Okay. Okay, good. So nobody's going to get mad at me until you start smelling the food here, and then you'll like it. Okay. Well, I don't mean to go too fast anyway. But when you go to the co-op or wherever you're going to buy turnip greens, there are 2 different varieties. Always, there may be somewhere different, but in Tennessee, too. They're called 7-top and purple top. 7-top are better for the greens. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean they won't put out a little bulb. They will, but it's not nearly as big. And you think purple top, what do you think? Better for the turnips themselves. And they'll also grow a leaf, and you can eat the leaf. But I'm just saying, it depends on what you're after. If you want to grow turnips, then I would go with the purple top. If you want to grow the greens, I'd go with the 7-top. Okay? Oh, please plant some beets. Please do. You won't regret it. Number one, the seed is very unusual. The seed of a beet are in clusters. They look like little bitty granola cereal. So I'd love to go around and show the kids, look at this seed. You know, I do that with lettuce too. By the way, in a lettuce, if you're going to plant lettuce, I don't try to do the rows. I do carrots, I do radishes in rows. But with lettuce, the seed's so small, I get those little pre-K out there, or kindergarten, and I say, okay, hold out your left hand. No, your other left hand. And I sprinkle a little seed in it. I said, get your little fingers and pinch. We're going to take those little things, maybe bend your knees because the wind might even blow it, and just sprinkle it in. And then we just pat it in. And there's our lettuce. It doesn't have to go very deep. Carrots the same way, but we put those in rows, and they're very small too, but when they start coming up, then you can pick them out and thin them out so it gives them space. So it's just little techniques. But beets, I love beets. And I love to show them the seed, the little cluster. So when you put a beet seed in the ground, 3 are going to grow from there. So you do the same thing, you thin out. And there are people who say, I don't like beets. I know, because you ate them in the cafeteria at school, and nobody liked them. Okay? I know. But I'm telling you, if you'll do these fresh, I promise you, I can even get my kids to eat them fresh when I bake them up or have them do it. If you want to do butter or even a little olive oil, I promise you they're sweet and they're good and they're very, 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 very good for you. So, by the way, Chris mentioned about this expensive salads. You can eat the leaves off of beets too. The leaves taste like beets. So these fancy restaurants that we've got down in Nashville, what they call the Gulch, they charge you $10 for the salad. That's what they're doing. They're bringing these microgreens in there, and they're nothing but the leaves off carrots and beets. And they're real colorful. They taste good, and they charge you $10. So you can grow your own. A lot cheaper. Here's a favorite of mine: Swiss chard. Anybody grow Swiss chard? Yes. Yeah, very good. It's what I call an edible plant, but it's an edible landscape. It's beautiful growing. These leaves are just so colorful. There's reds and oranges and purples, and of course the green. So it's multicolored. And then look at the stalk. It's like celery. Look how pretty that is. Now, by the way, these are things we're going toward. You can teach your kids. I'm teaching my kids. I've got a daughter who lives in an apartment, and she wants to grow things. You know, we're developing things like dwarf peach trees, dwarf plum trees, right there on your patio. You can have fresh fruit if you can keep it alive, you know. Same thing with tomatoes. We grow what we call bush tomatoes, and they can grow right there in a pot. Same thing with Swiss chard. Grow it in your pot, grow it somewhere, but grow it in your garden at school, and it's really good to eat, and it's pretty to look at. Okay, a quick thing about the packet of a seed. Please read the back of your packets. Why? Well, planting time, that's important. Now here's what's going to happen. In March, if you go into Home Depot or the Lowe's, guess what they will have for sale in March? Tomato plants. Now, why in the world would they want you to buy a tomato plant in March? Here's why. Because you'll put it out, it'll die, and you'll come back and buy another one. Okay? Planting time is so important. And by the way, on this package you're going to see we live in what they call a transitional temperature zone. This is important. And I'm talking more of Nashville than I am probably Crossville and over here, but Knoxville too. But Knoxville's a little different. Where do we grow most of our fruit in Tennessee? Do you know? No. Closer to you. Far east. That's why they have the Apple Festival over there near Unicoi County. One thing is fruit trees grow better on a slope that spares from the frost. But we live in a transitional zone. You see corn going out by the truckload here, and soybeans growing out by the truckload. Wheat. Why don't you see fruit growing out of here? Because it just doesn't grow well. In December, what was the weather like here around here? Warm. Where I'm from, it was warm. Guess what? I was walking, and somebody, this is the time of year to prune fruit trees, and so I've been pruning a lot of fruit trees for people. Went to one fruit tree in December, you know what it was doing? Budding. Little bitty buds. Why? It got warm, and it doesn't have a brain, but it reacts. But guess what happened then in January? Probably frozen. See what I mean? Now, will it bud again? Yes. But will it have as nearly as much fruit? No. And that's why people say, what should I do about my peach tree? And I say, well, you live in Nashville. Don't plant it! No, I don't say that. I don't say that. There's a lot of people who do fruit trees. But we can talk, this is a whole other subject. But just want you to know, we live in a transitional period of weather. Okay, weather's important. So planting time, planting depth, plant spacing, that's important. Estimated days to harvest. What about possible disease resistant? We'll talk about that more in a minute. And this one here, this is important. Do you realize every seed packet has an expiration date on it? You need to look for it. Don't buy year-old seed. In fact, Chris probably brought some. And now, listen, if they give it to you like they're going to do today, take it. If it's given, take it. But don't pay for it, at least not full price. It's not to say it won't germinate, but if it's a year old, there's a chance that it's not nearly as viable. So look for that expiration date on the back of that seed packet. He's got some seed from Obion County. I think probably he gave me a bunch last year for my school gardens, and I took every bit of it and planted as much as I could. Especially gave most of it to community gardens because there's most of the lima beans. Cabbage, very cold hardy. We can do this in schools, forms ahead, just different ways to do it. I'm going through these pretty quick because I just want you to see. I already told you about green peas. Well, I love these things. Anyway, you want to do the English peas, I love doing it in a school or even a community garden. Remember, when it gets hot, what's going to happen? These things are going to go away. But you can put them out very early. I'm serious. Into February. These are very, very cold hardy. Now, into our moderately cold hardy. Here's our broccoli. We're eating the floret, and we want to start pinching it. Or if you want to cut it, this shows a cut right here, sort of an angle cut. But you want to cut it sort of in an angle, but start from the middle and come out. If you keep doing that, then it will continue to produce more broccoli. Okay?
How can you keep the worms from getting into the rock? Is that a problem with everybody? Is it a problem or not?
Well, pests are a problem with everybody.
Okay.
Now, that's a good question. I'll take the time to talk about pesticide. In our school gardens, we have a policy of organic, totally organic. We don't spray anything, fungicide or pesticide. Now, I'm not against those practices. I'm just saying in school gardens we do that. And in your community garden, you can take whatever you want to. There are different ways organic folks can manage pests, and we can manage funguses. Now, hear what I said. Manage. Can we get rid of them? Can we totally eliminate them? No. I wouldn't have a job, for one thing. But secondly, we're trying to manage. And the organic people look at it and say, well, I'm gonna grow a bunch, so give them a little to eat too, and I'm gonna eat some too, right? Well, that's fine, but I don't want all the worms in my broccoli and all that. There are certain ways. Number one, you can think about in your school and community gardens, putting certain flowers in there that can be a repellent to certain moths. What's happened with these worms? Most of the time they're caterpillars, and they've been laid by a moth. And a moth comes, and certain moths go to broccoli, certain moths, of course, go to corn. We have the tomato worm, that's from a moth. If you can put marigolds out, many people say marigolds and that smell that they have will repel some of these moths. That's an organic way. Another thing is buckwheat. I love buckwheat. Put some buckwheat in your garden. It's very inexpensive. It's got a pretty little flower. It blooms real quick. But it can also, that's more of a pollinator, people, bringing other bugs in. Because if you got some worms, what would you like to, you know what eats caterpillars? Wasp. How many times you kill a wasp? See the yellow jacket? Let me tell you something, that yellow jacket, or what we call a paper wasp, why we call it paper wasp? Look up here in the corner, what do you see up there, that nest? You know what that paper wasp has done? Comes and goes on wood, you see it get on wood, and it's chewing on that wood, and with its saliva, it makes paper, goes up there and makes the wasp, or the nest. But those are she's in there. You know what they're putting in there? You know what they're eating? Caterpillars. They eat caterpillars. So you want to draw some things into your garden with things like buckwheat, marigolds, that's a repellent. But you can bring some of these blooming plants that are bringing these good pests. They come in there and they come for the smell. And they say, hey, oh, great, I'm glad I'm here because lunch is served too. So they eat the bad bugs that we can. Now, again, remember, we control, we try to manage. But if you're in a place, I'm not against using some pesticides, but I'm just telling you, in our school gardens, we do organic. Okay, this is a good one. Cauliflower. I have to admit, I don't grow too much cauliflower in school gardens, but certainly in community gardens we do. I want to talk to you a little bit about GMOs. This would be a good point. And GMOs are a big deal out there. One of the reasons I'm glad you're here today is because too many people just look on the internet and get their information. And a lot of it is just poor information. It's not backed up by research like we do at UT. It's just backed up because somebody's got an agenda and everybody says GMO is bad. What does it mean? Genetically modified organisms. The number one vegetable, or if you want to call it a fruit, that we grow in Tennessee gardens would be tomatoes. Exactly. And people love tomatoes. And you know what we've done? We've genetically modified tomatoes for a lot of different things. For instance, one, if you look on the tag of your tomato, it will say determinate or indeterminate. I promise you look at it, it'll say one of those two, determinate or indeterminate. What does that mean? Our traditional tomato plants are called indeterminate. How tall will they grow? Some of them grow 12 feet tall. Have to cage them, you have to stake them, have to keep tying them up, right? But then we've developed what they call a determinate. We'll only get about 3 feet. So you can grow it on your porch. If you want to have to be tied up, and then it's almost like a little bush. So that's a great, how do we do that? Through hybrids, through genetically modified organisms. It's a good thing. By the way, our number one disease in Tennessee that kills more tomato plants than you can shake a stick at is called early blight. Here's what happens. Rain comes down in the spring. We planted our plants maybe late April, 1st of May, and the rain hits that soil, and then that soil is a fungus. So it's natural, it grows in the soil. Pops up with the rain, gets on those lower leaves, starts that fungus, kills your tomato plant. It's called early blight. And people ask me, what are the symptoms of early blight? Here they are. Dead tomato plant. It's that quick. It's that quick. Now the only way you can do this is to spray. Now if you're in a school garden, you don't spray, you're going to get early blight. Okay? Unless you decide you'd like to grow a hybrid tomato, which has been bred to be resistant to early blight. Wow. Isn't that a good thing? Okay. Heirloom versus hybrid. Now, I'm not promoting one or the other because I'm all for it. If you go to the Hermitage at Andrew Jackson's home, go there sometime. You'll think it's worth it, I think, for at least once. And in that, they've got plants growing from seed that have been carried on all the way since Andrew Jackson was alive. What have they done? They saved that seed. Isn't that wonderful? It's great. And some people say, there's nothing better I like than an heirloom tomato. The taste of an heirloom tomato is like none other. I say, I like the taste of a living tomato plant. Now, it's true. But maybe in a school garden you can make an experiment. You can say, over here we're going to put an heirloom, and over here we're going to put a hybrid. We're not going to spray anything because we don't. Let's see what happens. Let's see how they do. You know, maybe one year we don't have as much early blight as we did this year. Tennessee's crazy. Okay, I don't know about here, and this is off my garden, but just Tennessee and weather and our world and environment. Did y'all notice that this fall we had all these little white things floating around? Mm-hmm. Did y'all have them here? Yes. Something got all over your windshields too, didn't it? You know what those were? They were called Asian woolly aphids. And you know what? They only got on one tree. You know what it was? Hackberry. That's all they go to. And you took a hackberry leaf off, and you pull it, they just fly off. And they fly around. They don't hurt anything. What they do is they suck the juice out of that leaf, and then they poop it out. And that's what that honeydew, we call it. Isn't that a nice word for it? Honeydew. It gets all over your car. What do you do about it? Well, we don't know why we have those Asian woolly aphids every year to a certain degree. We have so many this year. Wow. Who knows why? We don't know why. But we don't know. So some years we might have more early blight than we did the other year. So if you've got a hybrid tomato, if you have an heirloom tomato, you probably need to spray it with some kind of fungicide. You can look for organic things if you want to, but if you've got an heirloom tomato, it's very susceptible to early blight, okay? But I'm just saying, showing you that through GMOs, we've done some good things. And by the way, you don't save seed from hybrids, right? Because when you cross a horse and you cross a donkey, you get a mule, and that mule cannot, it might be a Jack or a Jenny, but that one cannot reproduce. Same thing with our seeds. Once they're hybrid, you can't reproduce. I'm just telling you the facts, and you can make your own choices. Let me show you another good thing about GMOs. Cauliflower. When we go to the store and buy eggs, most people buy what color of eggs? White. Now, listen, I'm all for every one of them, but people just look at eggs and think white when they're cleaning. But if you have free-range chickens, those eggshells are going to be all kind of colors of the rainbow, you know. But because of the diet that they feed them in the chicken places, they've got white eggs. People think that's cleaner. White bread, white eggs, all this. What about cauliflower? Anybody want to buy some yellow cauliflower? No? You know what happened? Cauliflower grows like this, and of course, here's again the florets. The sun hits it, and guess what happens to it? It turns yellow. Nothing wrong with it. Still very edible. Didn't take any of the nutrients out. But guess what? People won't buy it. So you know what we had to do? We used to have to call it blanch. You had to tie it up. Now, if you've got 3, no problem. What if you're out, say, in Southern California, and you've got 3,000? You know what we did? We developed a cauliflower plant that'll actually, leaves will come over and cover it itself. Self-blanching is what it's called. Isn't that amazing? I'm just trying to tell you, and this is what I'm trying to tell you. Teach middle school, is that right? You're doing the Lord's work there. I'm telling you. Teenage years are hard. But I tell my middle school and my high school, but especially in my middle school, I'm trying to teach them that we have the greatest agricultural system in all the world. If you travel, you can't just walk into any restaurant in Thailand and think, okay, whatever, just give it to me. Whew, Mexico, same thing. But you can go into any restaurant. There are exceptions here, aren't there? But these kids don't go into Zaxby's and say, not only do I want the chicken fingers, but I want to watch them cook it. I don't do that. We have a word called trust. We've grown up with it. And we do have the greatest system. And I'm not going to go over what Chris already said, but the technology and the tools we've got have done great things. GMOs are one of our tools. Now, I'm not trying to tell you how to feel about GMOs, but I'm just saying there are some facts out there that GMOs have done great things for us. Potatoes, I won't go into too much of this. I love growing fresh tomatoes. Excuse me, fresh potatoes. But when you do, you got to hill them up. And you can, I'll show you a little bit about this. You can take a potato from the store, and if you cut it up, it'll grow. What if you leave it in your pantry too long? What happens? Yeah. But it's better to go ahead and go to the store and get what we call seed potatoes. In the store, they spray a retardant on those potatoes that doesn't hurt you, it just keeps it from budding out too soon. That's why they don't grow right off. But buy one from the store, go to the co-op, look for seed potatoes. They used to have Potomac and Kennyback, we call them skinny backs. Whatever you know, and what you want to take that seed though, and you cut the eye out of it, you know what I mean by the eye, and put it in a dark, dry place, let it dry out. Don't plant it while it's still wet, it'll rot in the ground, okay? But you want to, what you call subberize it. And when you do plant it, you want to hill these potatoes up. So you want to plant it in real loose soil. You can do it in your school bed gardens. It's easy. And you don't have to do it like they do in conventional gardens. Literally, they'll have a row of like 12 hills where the potatoes are growing. But see, they continue to grow, and you just keep heaping dirt up on top so they'll keep growing. Irish potatoes, again, straight from the garden, are delicious. Let's talk quickly about fertilizer. What you need to know about fertilizer is if you want to do organic fertilizer, I'm all for you. Composting, vermiculture. That's why these microorganisms are so important in our soil, because these earthworms are there and they're aerating the soil, they're bringing nutrients into the soil, they're allowing the nutrients to get to the roots, all those good things. And so we use composting, and if we put worms in our composting, they're helping to break it down. And then their castings, which is their manure, is very, very high in good nutrients. So you can do that. You can do synthetic fertilizer too, and I'm all for it. In fact, I do synthetic fertilizer some in schools, especially if they don't have any kind of a compost. But here are 3 numbers you need to know. That's all you need to know really about fertilizer. 3 numbers. And it'll say up here 10, 10, 10, which by the way is what I recommend for any school garden. 10, 10, 10. The first number represents nitrogen. Nitrogen grows green. So if you want to grow the lawn out here, we're going to put high nitrogen. At the old co-op where I used to work in Eagleville, Tennessee, the farmers came in to fertilize their hay. They wanted triple 15, 15, 15, 15, high nitrogen, grow that grass. But would you want high nitrogen on a tomato plant? No, because you grow all stem and no fruit. So the second one is phosphorus. That's what's going to grow your roots and your fruits, okay? So this might be a better one for tomatoes. See, low in nitrogen, but high in phosphorus. That last one is potassium, or potash, which helps grow what I call our bean bush. Needs to have strength in the stem, and potash gives it that. So those are the three things that you want to do when you're talking about fertilizer. So you'll look for those numbers. How about transplanting? Let me talk quickly about that. I hope that you'll do this. I hope that you'll start some plants from seeds. Get you a grow light. Get this $500 from Farm Bureau. Get this $2,000 from TRPA. And buy some grow lamps. They're not expensive, but just one or two. Put them in the classroom and start some seeds. You start out and you put that. It's got an adjustable lamp. By the way, did you know these lights will grow plants, but not very well. They just don't have enough warmth to them. You got to have that glow lamp, that grow lamp. You put it right down on the soil, and once it starts germinating, you raise it up, raise it up, raise it up. And then you can transplant it. You don't have to do everyone like that, but we can transplant some and show the kids how we started from a seed inside and we took it out. At one school, we were planting that day. I think we had 8 beds, and one of the classes, I think it was the first or the second grade, had planted pumpkin seeds. It's fun, isn't it? They've grown them in the windowsill. It's great. What they didn't do is what we call harden these plants off. What I mean by that is, if you've got a plant that's been growing in this very controlled environment, if you stick it outside there, don't put it out yet. Take it out for an hour or so and bring it back in. And the next day do the same thing. Maybe a little longer. Harden it off. Here's what happened to those pumpkin plants. They brought them out, I'm telling you, in 30 seconds. I'm not kidding you. Those plants were here, they went, and those kids were crying. And I said, don't cry, don't cry. I promise they'll be okay. And we put them in the ground, and they were still wilting. We put them in the ground. Next day, 2 days, whatever, they were back up. But I'm just saying, your plant's going to do better. It's just what we do. When I worked on the farm all the time, I'd be outside and people say, man, how do you stay in this cold? Well, I'm acclimated to it. I'm out in it every day. But if I sit under the heater every day, I can't just go out there and just walk in it. Same thing with these plants. They need to be kind of hardened off. Pick a cloudy day if you can, or late in the afternoon. Okay, let's talk about watering, and then I'm pretty well through, except for my songs. That's fair warning. Okay? When you water, please, 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 I'd love you to water underneath the plants instead of on top. Now, do I have school gardens that water this way? Yes, I do, and they do well. But if you have to water this way, please do it early in the morning. That way it gives the whole day the heat to not knock the moisture off. I learned this the hard way. I was working at the YWCA there in Nashville. I had beautiful squash. You ever seen squash leaf? Big as an elephant ear. And I remembered I needed to water, and it had been 3 or 4 days. And the truth is, we water when it's convenient. We really do, you know. And I went out there about 3 in the afternoon and watered those things. And it wasn't long, I got some kind of fungus, and they were all dead. Dead. I had some beautiful squash, and they're dead. What happens? Well, that moisture gets on that leaf, it gets underneath those leaves, and it's dark, goes through the night. Fungus, just like a petri dish for fungus. I hope you're asking, well, what about when it rains at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, okay. Well, we can't control that, but let's don't compound the problem, is what I'm saying. If you water over, do it in the morning, when it's got time to dry off. This is my favorite way to do it, and this is not hard. This is called drip irrigation, and you've got a spigot maybe, or you can even write this one down, look up Living Waters. Okay, there's a website. Guys up in New York State, y'all know about Living Waters? Okay, New York State, and he has this whole drip irrigation system with 5-gallon buckets, believe it or not, and it works well. So that's something, but it's a basic thing. Here's your water source. This thing comes to a pipe, or a hose pipe of some kind, and it's got these little leaders coming off, and those got little pinpricks, little holes. It's just a little bitty drip going out. So it's watering the soil. You put this on a timer. If you're thinking school, you're thinking, okay, I want a garden, but what's going to happen in July? Who's going to water then? Well, if you got it on a timer, you're good. And you can set the timer depending on your rain. But here again, it's a lot more. What happens in that lawn sprinkler? Evaporation, right? Water's being wasted. But if you put it right down there on the soil, your plant is using water efficiently. So I like that one. This might be my last. No, I recommend what I call slow release fertilizer in most of these gardens. You know what I mean? One of them is called Osmocote. I'm not necessarily endorsing this particular brand. I'm just endorsing slow release fertilizer. Fertilizer is salt, and if you get too much, you get too close to plants. If you don't water it in and work it in, it can literally burn your plants. I've burned my lawn grass before with too much nitrogen. These old farmers are going to, if they're going to fertilize their hayfield, they always try to come and get the truck right before rain so it can get watered in. So fertilizer, slow release, I like that Osmocote. It's a 14-14-14, but it's a slow release and it'll continue to feed. And here's the thing, don't grow weeds. Don't grow Johnson grass. We got plenty of that around. Okay, you can get those lights if you don't mind. Well, I hope you, if you're an educator, then you've got passion for educating kids. You're not in it for the money, I know. And by the way, if you're a school teacher, whatever, I say God bless you, because you already got too much on your plate. So when I go into a school and say, hey, who wants a school garden? Well, teachers, they know it's a good thing, but it's one more thing. Right? One more thing on the plate. So I said, well, let me help you along the way, but let's teach these kids with fun ways. And one fun way is teaching through music. So I've been able to, do a couple of these little songs. This first one I just do a little piece of, but this is just about what I call, what Chris mentioned about there's something healing about getting your hands in the soil, getting back to the earth. When I was a kid, I read this book from Pearl Buck called The Good Earth. You remember that? That's one of the reasons I put that lyric in this song. So I love that book. And anyway, talking about this good earth. This song's called Digging in the Dirt. It goes like this. Digging in the dirt. Digging in the dirt. Learning how to grow, learning how to work. Digging in the dirt. Getting back in touch with this good earth. Digging in the dirt. You might get a little bit on your hands and your shirt, digging in the dirt. Yeah, let's plant a seed, watch it grow. The stem and stalk grow to the sky, the roots grow down below. The roots grow down below. Well, turn off that computer, turn off your TV. Now let's get out in the garden, that's a real fine place to be. Lots of fresh air and sunshine, and fun at every turn. Digging in the dirt, digging in the dirt. Learning how to grow, learning how to work. Digging in the dirt. Getting back in touch with this good earth. Digging in the dirt. You might get a little bit on your hands and your shirt. Digging in the dirt. Digging in the dirt. Everybody say yeehaw. Yeehaw. Okay, before I do the last song, is the food here?
It'll still be about 10 minutes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Hey, where are you from? How long have you been here? Trying to buffet this week? Okay. Well, I'll take a few more minutes. First of all, before I sing the last song, let's talk about questions, because I went through a lot of that real fast and gave you a lot of information. Are there any questions or comments or complaints? Go all to Candy. Well.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I saw the Miracle Grow
Uh-huh.
thing, but I've heard some negative things about using Miracle Grow. What are your thoughts?
I'm all for it. Now, it depends on what you want to do. It's not organic. It's a synthetic, just like that Osmocote. I've shown you those three different things because one was a slow release, and then some of those others are not slow release, and then the Miracle Grow is water. You know, do it through a sprinkler or through just your whatever. People over-fertilize them. I do. I have to be honest with you. They don't read the directions to say, how much fertilizer do you need around this plant? And they just swim. So with Miracle Grow, it's easy to over-fertilize. That would be the most negative thing I've really found out about it. But any kind of, if you're not opposed to synthetic fertilizer, which I'm not, then it's a good thing. It really is a good thing. Again, I like that Osmocote because it gets in the soil, doesn't get on the leaves. I don't like overwatering them much of any kind. And Miracle Grow, you have to kind of overwater with it. Did I answer your questions? Okay. What else?
What about cow manure?
Okay, any kind of manure. Chris mentioned chicken manure, which is very high in nitrogen. Well, you have to be careful. All you have to do is make sure you set it aside for 90 days. Don't put it straight on. You talk about burning it up. you know, it'll burn it up. So try to let it stay off, and if you can keep it out of the weed seeds and everything else, you know, keep it someplace where it's by itself. Let it stay about 90 days, and then you can put it on. And I encourage that of any kind. Any kind you can get some good manure, any kind of that you talk about true organic. That's the way our great grandfathers, grandparents did it. We didn't have synthetic fertilizer in that time. So we've gone maybe a little overboard. Chris is right. It's not the farmers so much that are doing the overboard. It's the landowners. You know, who wants that beautiful green grass? How do you get that? Well, True Green's going to come in there and tell you, here, let me do this. And they'll spray, right? Get you that green grass. But anyway, so I love manure. I love that. That's very good. And this last song is about earthworms and about, you know, what do we do? Why am I teaching about earthworms? Well, number one is it's all about composting. In Nashville, we've got what they call a National Beautification Society. They will actually lease you a worm bin for the school year. Yeah. So you can have it all year. And some people say, I've got worms in my classroom. Ooh, there's no smell. You're not putting, peelings and wet stuff and then you're putting more dry things in. What do the worms do? Well, they eat this. You know, they don't have true mouth parts, but they're eating nonetheless. And when they do this, they put their castings out, which is, of course, high in nutrients. And then they help you break down this material. So the kids are watching it every day. And what boy doesn't like to see a big old earthworm, right? We have to be careful he doesn't shake it at somebody. But those are all good things. And I wanted to teach this because I wanted to talk about how important earthworms are. Chris mentioned it in that topsoil. Those micro organisms are very important because they're breaking down. We don't really have topsoil left, especially in Nashville. You know what we're doing with all of our land there? We're bulldozing it off and putting places to live. Every single place you go, every little corner. Because people are coming into Nashville, they've been watching that TV show and they believe it. And they're coming in. But
And your singers too.
oh yeah, that's been happening for 50 years. Yeah, they're still living in the cars, so there's no problem. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. We're going to work up an appetite for our lunch. Everybody stand up, please. Push your chairs in, stand behind your chairs. You're going to do a little worm wiggle with me, okay? Now, we're not going to get this on camera, Candy, okay? So nobody's going to get blackmailed here. Just kidding. But I teach this song about earthworms, and in the middle of the song, I'm going to turn around so you know what we're going to do. I'm going to say, we're going to start wiggling, we're going to go. We're going to wiggle to the left. Come on, do it with me. Here we go. Wiggle to the left, wiggle to the right. Now, I've got to turn around. Wiggle real loose, just loose. Wiggle real tight. Wiggle up and down. Wiggle all around. And then grab your nose and say, and do it all underground. Okay, we're going to do it again. Ready? Going to wiggle to the left, wiggle to the right. Wiggle real loose and wiggle real tight. Wiggle up and down, wiggle all around, and do it all underground. Okay, you got it. Okay, good deal. Now let me sing the verse, and then we'll do that little dance, and we'll see everybody do it, okay? Yeah, I know you didn't sign up for this today, but it's okay. If I could be any animal in the world, what would I be? I'd be an earthworm. 'Cause I don't know about you, but I want to do what earthworms do. I want to turn around, dig all around, way down deep and never make a sound. I make the soil so much better, yes it's true. And I don't know about you, but I want to do what earthworms do. Y'all ready? Ready to wiggle? Here we go. We're going to wiggle to the left, wiggle to the right. Wiggle real loose, wiggle real tight. Wiggle up and down, wiggle all around, and do it all underground. And I don't know about you, yeah, but I want to do what earthworms do. Now here's what they're really trying to teach you. Casting and compost, I do some of the most organic things that you have ever seen. I'm more than just fish bait. I do what's called aerate the soil, and it's great. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? If you do this wiggle again, we're gonna wiggle to the left, wiggle to the right, wiggle real loose, wiggle real tight, wiggle up and down, wiggle all around, and do it all underground. And I don't know about you, yeah, but I want to do what earthworms do. Let's say yeehaw! Good job, give yourself a hand. Thank you. in a minute.